Hey guys, my name is Simio, and welcome to our episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Julian, and it is, what do you think about an offensive operator that has a special device that works like Thatcher, but it's a bigger EMP? He may use his gadget only twice per match, and his EMP will cover the entire map, shutting down every electronic device for 10 seconds. So I've always wanted to have an alternative to Thatcher. With the abundant amount of trap operators that have been introduced over these last couple of seasons with Legion, Ella, CanCan saw some significant changes. It would be nice if we had someone else other than just Twitch or Thatcher that was designed specifically to deal with these traps. On top of that, this also fits really well with Ubisoft's design philosophy lately, which is global abilities. Now, I know a lot of people aren't really a fan of global abilities, and I fit into that category, and we'll get to that here in a second. But that seems the direction that Ubisoft is heading, and so maybe they will introduce someone along these lines. And then finally, with a well-coordinated team, this guy would be really powerful. You need to get through that reinforced wall? Sure, you could have brought a Thatcher, or you could just activate this guy's ability, and then for the next 10 seconds, that's plenty of time for your Thermite to open up said wall. You need to rush the objective, and you know that they have a Legion or some Ella mines down? Well, you don't need to worry about that slowing you down anymore. Activate his ability, and then everyone rush on in. The problem I have with this guy, though, is that it might be too good. One limiting factor of it is that you only do get that 10-second window, and he's only able to activate his gadget twice, and imagine that the gadgets that are deactivated go back online. They're not destroyed. On top of that, you only do get that 10-second window, so you need to be well coordinated with your team if you do want to get that push onto the objective. The thing is, though, is that being well coordinated isn't that much of a limiting factor. Like, it's not that difficult to say, hey, we're rushing on in right now. And also, this is exactly the way that Lion works. Imagine an offensive team with Dokkaebi, Lion, and this new operator. Your phones are going off, you can't move because of Lion's gadget, and now all of those traps that you laid around, which you assumed were going to slow down their progress, like Legion and a CanCan, for example, are no longer activated for that 10-second window. The rush meta is already really strong right now in Rainbow Six Siege, and I feel like the only way to slow them down at least a little bit is with those trap operators. If those trap operators are no longer able to do their job even remotely effectively, then that is going to be even more of a nightmare to deal with. And so while I love the idea of having an alternative to Thatcher, I don't know if having more global abilities is the right way to go about it. I know that some people might disagree with me. Some people might really love this idea because it would add in some interesting new dynamics into Rainbow Six Siege, but I'm not entirely sold on it. The next question comes from Everett, and it is, what do you think about all of the nerfs Ubisoft is doing lately? I feel like if all the operators reverted back to how they were before the nerf, it would be more balanced than it is now. So I realize that there's some people out there that like the design philosophy that if everything's overpowered, then nothing is. I believe that this is the way that they balance out their heroes in Dota 2, for example. Everyone has their unique ability. If you play it properly, you're gonna be overpowered, and that's what makes that game fun and interesting. But I don't think that same design should be applied to every single video game. Do we want to have an overpowered Blackbeard again, who has an 800 HP shield and was basically immortal outside of Windows? That doesn't sound fun to me. Do we want to see a return to Ella when she was in her prime, where she had more rounds, her gadget was even better than it was, and she had absolutely no recoil? That also sounds like a nightmare. Do we not want to have Lion nerfed? Like, yeah, if they're all overpowered, Nunza, I don't buy that. I don't buy it. Like, it's not the way that I like to see video games balanced. I feel like as soon as you go down that path, it's more about the gimmick of the ability that's winning you these engagements and less about what makes the game fun. If you get taken out by a Blackbeard that's outside of a window with 800 HP, there is nothing you could do about that in that 1v1 situation. You lost because of his gadgets. You have the entire team charge at you because they droned you out, and now you have to stand still because Lion's gadget is activated, you lost because of his gadgets. I don't ever want it to get to the point where gadgets are the reason why you win or loss. Yes, they're gonna give you an advantage. That's the reason why you have them. You're gonna want to use them in your favor, but that shouldn't be the sole reason why you won or lost in that situation. As soon as you start to go down the path where everyone's overpowered for their specific reason, I feel like you start to fall into that trap. And so while I do see where you're coming from, and it might work in other video games, I just don't think it has a place in Rainbow Six Siege. The next question is, what do you think about deleting or removing tilted towers from Fortnight'S? So I realize that I'm not the biggest authority on Fortnite. I'm sure some people are going to disagree with me on this one, but I would love if Tilted Towers was either changed significantly or just flat out removed. The big problem with having a condensed area like that with a lot of loot, especially in the center of the map, is that most matches are going to have a lot of people jump there because there's a lot of loot and a lot of action. And while I know that some people will argue, hey, I love Tilted Towers. I love that chaotic action. I love just kind of messing around, taking out a couple of people, eventually get taken out myself, and then just join a queue and rinse and repeats. Other people will argue that even if you remove Tilted Towers, there will always be a Tilted Towers. There will always be a couple of spots that are really popular for people to jump on in, and so by removing it from the game, you're not really accomplishing anything because the mob will just shift somewhere else. And while that argument absolutely holds water, there will always be a couple sections on the map that people are going to gravitate towards, I don't think the developers should specifically design or incentivize these locations where 40 people are going to drop on in. You're going to have a hard time convincing me that if every city was just one building, I realize that that's not a city, but bear with me, but if every location was just a single building with a couple of items in it, that 40 people would drop in that one building. Of course not. They're going to spread out. Maybe you had a city that had 2 buildings in it. That, of course, is going to attract a couple more because there's more loot. But it's not going to get to the point where 40 people are dropping in that one location. And so I think that by removing or changing Tilted Towers would be a great step in the right direction, at least from my point of view. Yes, you will always have these hot spots, but if you're able to drop the amount of people from 40 down to, let's say, 30 or 25 somewhere else, yes, there's a lot of chaotic action there, but at least you got 10 to 15 others to spread out all over the rest of the map. And I think that's a good thing for a BR game. The next question is, do you think that Ubisoft is focusing too much on operators that affect other ops and should focus more on ones that change the environments? So I'm assuming that this question is in relation to a discussion I've seen bounce around a lot, and that is that the reason why we've had so many overpowered operators lately is that Ubisoft is designing them around affecting other operators and not about manipulating and changing the environment. We want to have more Miras. We want to have less Ellas and Lions. And while I can absolutely see where you're coming from on this one, if we were able to have more operators like Mira, that would be incredible. Mira, when she was first introduced, was a game changer, practically revolutionary, because she was able to not only be a balanced operator, but change the way that we played and approached the objective, not only for offense, but also for defense. And so the argument is that Ubisoft should focus more on ops that affect the environment like Mira or those original operators, and less like what they've been doing recently, like Lion and Ella, where their gadget is specifically meant to put you at a disadvantage when it is activated. The thing is, though, is that I feel like this would severely limit Ubisoft's creative freedom, but also is a bit narrow-minded. There's only so many ways that Ubisoft would be able to come up with new operators that changes the environment around you. There's only so many ways you can open up holes. And while, yes, those early operators, a lot of them dealt with just opening up walls. Sledge, Ash, Thermite, even some of the DLC operators, they were all about just making new lines of sight onto the objective room. But that only gets you so far. Those other operators that were introduced after that, and even some of the original ones like Capcan and Blitz, for example, they directly affect the offense or defensive team. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Echo, for example, he's all about disorienting the enemy and trying to stop them from planting the diffuser. Most would argue that he's not overpowered. Some would argue that he's even a little bit underpowered. Legion, for example, I feel like is one of the most well-balanced operators that has ever been introduced. I love that character. You've got Jackal, Frost, like all of these operators affect someone else. They're not about manipulating the environments, but they bring something to the table. And so while I can absolutely see why people are frustrated with these new operators being introduced that are overpowered, I don't necessarily think it's because of their specific design. Yes, I would love to have more mirrors introduced. Having more revolutionary operators like that would be amazing, but I don't think limiting Ubisoft's creative freedom is necessarily the best way of going about it. But of course, that is just my 2 cents. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you like the idea of having a global Thatcher introduced into the game? Do you think that's a bad idea? Let me know down below in the comments. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.